Since the invasion of Super Earth, I've noticed a huge influx of new cadets from boot camp. So you're fresh from Mars, or I guess now an undisclosed location, given a shiny new super destroyer, a liberator, and free to go wherever available for Super Earth, and have no idea what you should be doing. Helldivers 2 is a community-based war game where the Helldiver Corps, us, is fighting at least as of right now, a three-front war against three factions: Terminids, bugs, automatons, bots, and Illuminate, the squids. However, over time, it's become ever so present that people, through no fault of their own, just don't know how to read the galaxy map, how the defense or liberation of a planet work, and all the important information the game will barely tell you. So in today's video, I'll be stepping away from the front lines to inform you cadets how to properly affect the war effort in our favor. First thing you will see when at the galaxy map is, well, the galaxy, go figure. But you will notice automatons on the left in their territory marked by red, Terminids in their territory marked by yellow, and the Illuminate invasions when popped up marked by purple. If it doesn't glow a color, it means that planet is liberated and belongs to us, Super Earth. Now, when you click on a highlighted sector, let's look at the bots for example, you will notice lines that web between each other. Treat these as hallways. They are called supply lines, but for painting a picture, we will call them hallways. These hallways allow you to travel planet to planet as long as we own that planet, i.e. it's liberated. For example, the sectors in the dark red we can't travel to since we have no liberated planets that would allow us to path there. Let's look at the Tanis sector planets. As of right now, we can still attempt liberation efforts on Vogue and Colossa since we have a supply line link, or hallways, that belong to us and are connected to those planets from Clourel. However, supply lines do more than just make it so we can attack a planet, they also can affect a planet's resistance, or pushback rate. When you hover over an enemy world, you will see a stat above the liberation bar saying enemy resistance, then followed by a low or high, and a percent. Let's keep this in mind as we go over planets. Planets, if you can imagine, are like bosses. Imagine in these hallways, they lead to arenas with a boss in it that have 1 million health. Now you and thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, are all in this arena constantly attacking this boss doing damage. You and other Helldivers collectively will create damage that will begin the liberation effort, which is calculated as a percent. Let's look at Vega Bay. When you look at this planet, you see that the resistance is at a low level and at 0.5%. Currently, there are 77 Helldivers on that planet. As they complete missions, doing side objectives and successfully extracting with low deaths, and depending on difficulty will generate, quote, damage, which as I said before is auto-calculated as a percent. This percent damage has to be past the threshold. For Vega Bay, it would be a 0.5% threshold. Why? Back to our arena boss analogy. Imagine you're doing damage to the boss, i.e. the planet, but the boss has the ability to regain its health. No damage is permanent, and you have to make sure you out DPS the health regenerate, otherwise you'll find yourself fighting the boss forever. This is the same with planets. With Vega Bay, those 77 Helldivers are only able to generate a 0.011% damage, which is not past the threshold of 0.5%, meaning the planet's 1 million HP is not going down, meaning that these players, for all extensive purposes, are wasting their time there. You are probably wondering, how did I get the 0.011% number? Did I just pull it out of thin air so I sounded smart for the video? Well, no, the game will not show you. But on the Helldivers companion app or the website, which I'll link down below, you can see the same map you would in-game with all the information and more on each planet. However, you can get bogged down in a lot of numbers, so I'm only telling you the ones you need to focus on, which is the damage we do, the resistance or pushback rate of that planet, and the liberation bar or health bar of the planet. Planet resistances can be as high as 10%, but usually if it's that high, it's major order related and will go down with time. Most of the time you will see a 0.5 to 2%, usually only seeing 3 to 5% when an enemy subfaction is staging on said planet. These resistances can be lowered by liberating planets next to that world or cutting it off from the faction. as well as sometimes when a planet has a high resistance in the 1.5 to 2%. As the community continues to dive there and do damage, the numbers of enemies on said planet will begin to weaken, lowering the pushback rate by usually 0.5%. For example, when Dolph was under automaton rule, we had cut it off from the automaton supply chain. That resistance stat shot down to 0%, meaning any damage done was permanent. Literally, those 77 Helldivers on Vega Bay could liberate Dolph by themselves. It would take a few centuries, but it's possible. Yes, I'm not joking. Centuries. Liberating planets takes a long time. Sometimes liberation efforts like Martal, when it was first liberated, could take up to a month, or it can take as little as just a few days. This all depends on the community and where it's diving, as if there are more players in the arena, that means more damage is being done. If you pass the regen rate or resistance rate and stack higher and higher damage to the liberation rate drops more and more. However, if the Liberation Force starts to bleed fire teams who decide to switch to a different faction or planet, you will consequently lose DPS. Your damage is determined by the impact you generate at the end of each mission. Yes, mission, not operation. So if you do one mission from an operation and decide, hey, I want to raise or lower the difficulty and start a new operation, you will not negatively affect the effort. As well as difficulty, it's probably obvious, but someone doing Super Helldive or difficulty 10 will have more impact than someone doing hard or difficulty 5, as well as clearing a map's side objectives and outposts will also add to doing more damage. These numbers I'm about to say are arbitrary, but let's say for example you do a Super Helldive mission and you only do the major objective and extract as quick as possible. You're only going to get 3 damage out of the 10 you could have done to the planet. If you do everything, then you get full 10 damage. However, the more you die, extract without a full squad, fail the mission, or get none of the side objectives but complete the major objective, all will affect your damage. So let's say you got the full damage but used up all the revives and only extracted with 2 people. Well, instead of doing the 10 damage, now you're doing about 5 or 4. So it's very important that you you pick a difficulty you are comfortable at. There is no shame in doing 6s or 7s, especially if you're able to do these with less deaths than doing Super Helldive but you use up all the revives before the 30-minute mark. The other way to do damage is to vote for the DSS or the Democracy Space Station to warp to a planet. Once at a planet, it will provide a multiplier to the liberation damage, as well as you have attacks or passives you can donate resources to activate that can even do more damage, halt invasions, or pause timers on invasions with. We get simple buffs like Hell Pod Optimization, aka spawn in with max ammo and nades for free, to a free 380 stratagem, to Eagle Storms, which has eagle strafing runs periodically do attack runs on bots or bugs or squids in the mission. You can only vote one time every 4 hours, and whatever planet you get the most votes for, it will go there, providing the buffs until voted to go elsewhere. As well as, let's say you vote the DSS to a planet but it's liberated before the 3 hours is up, the DSS will automatically warp to the second highest voted planet. Now, we've focused totally on when we are attacking, but this is a war. What happens when we are attacked? At that point, a planet that belongs to the enemy will light up with an attacking icon, and the supply line linking that planet to ours will start to pulse, shooting arrows towards the defending planet, letting you know where we're being attacked from. At this point, the most critical decision has to be made. Do you defend the planet or attack the invading planet? You might be asking, why would you want to attack the invading planet? Well, if you were to liberate an invading planet before they were to successfully conquer the defending world, you would result in an auto-completion of the defense campaign, and a planet that belongs to the enemy is now liberated. This is called a gambit by the community. Now you're asking, why not just do a gambit every time? Remember previously I said the liberation of planets, unless you have a high portion of the player population, can take days or at worst weeks. Defense campaigns only last 24 hours. You get 1 day to defend the planet. After that, it's lost. So gambits are not always something the player base can do or even should do. So how will you know when a gambit is possible? Look at a planet's resistance rate. If it's 0% to 1%, it's almost always possible to do the gambit. 1.5% is pushing it, but anything past 1.5% on the regen rate is just due to defense. It would take longer to liberate than it would to just defend the planet. Especially look at the health bar or liberation bar, same thing. But look at that bar. If it's low or at 0%, and it's at 1.5% resistance rate, forget the gambit, defend the planet. Now, it's a range and will require some critical thinking, since there is countless different scenarios you can be in. For example, if the planet is at 72% already liberated at a 1.5 resistance, attempting a gambit is definitely possible and is the correct decision than defending. If a planet has a 0.5% resistance rate and is at 15% liberated, attempting a gambit is definitely possible. It's also very important you see where the DSS is and where that player base blob is. If you notice you made the strategically sound decision to attempt the gambit, but 31,000 Helldivers in the space station decided to do the defense, don't be those 8k players who are just wasting their time. Swap over to the defense and help push that damage number higher. The one time I will say always do a gambit is when the invading planet is attacking two separate planets. This is referred to as a double gambit, and while this community has only ever done a handful successfully, hopefully with this information it will help spread the word. But double gambits are just a net positive. You defend two planets and liberate one, as well as defending from two invasions are borderline impossible, as usually one invasion is stronger than the other. Oh wait, you don't know? Remember how planets had a resistance rate? Well, invasions have a level. Highest level I've seen yet is 810. Anything above 40 is basically impossible. The lower the level, the easier it is to win. When doing a defense campaign, you have two bars. You have a liberation bar generated by the invasion force that will be a constant percent. So let's look at Tarsh. The constant percent generated by the bots is a 4.167%. That means the defenders need to create a resistance of something higher than 4.167%. These two bars are in a race for 24 hours. Whichever bar reaches 100% wins. Now in this race, we have tricks to boost our speed, do more damage, and halt the invasion forces bar. All of that resides in the DSS. Eagle Storm will stop the invasion in place, allow us to catch up or greaten our distance. Then the other two options are just damage multipliers, and please understand the blockade, if activated, you have to put it on a planet that's already not invading. Because I've seen a lot of people, they'll activate the blockade and then put it on the planet that's already invading and be mad that it didn't stop the invasion. What it's essentially meaning, the blockade, is that if you activate the blockade and then put it on a planet that is not invading, essentially the AI, or the game masters, can't allow an invasion to happen from that world. It needs to happen beforehand to prevent that planet from having an option to invade. You cannot do it after the fact. There are unique invasions, such as the Jet Brigade from the automatons, who start off at a high invasion level, which is 40, and will take attrition damage as they go from invasion to another, making it easier and easier to stop them until they are wiped out. As well as, like I said, sub-factions will be having a higher overall resistance rate or invasion level than, let's say, a normal bog standard troop variety. And I think I've covered the basics and most of the important information that you need to understand the Galactic War with. It's a complicated system if you have no idea what you're reading. However, I hope this video was able to make it easier to understand. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below, and I or one of the thousands of Helldivers will be there to give you an answer. If you're a cadet or a 10-star general looking for a community to play with, then join my 2nd Liberation Battalion. Discord link is in the description. We host events and we have unique rewards for participants. Thank you for your time. And if you want to see other guides I've done, check out the channel. Be safe, and I'll see you on the front lines.